out is not a possibility because you will need it's simple as that security and maintenance team to run your warehouse, because you need security to come and make sure it's it's secure warehouse, and your maintenance team something breaks. So robots are gonna take over. I'm not denying that, but I'm denying that it's not gonna be lights out. It's gonna be robot forward warehousing. Sorry, podcast, but it's gonna be robot forward. So what are your thoughts on it? And please fight with me because I wanna learn
Mhm.
about what
And I
other
think
people said.
I think you will be disappointed, but I am absolutely in echo with what you say in terms of
Oh,
robot
okay.
forward warehouses, and I
Okay.
share the same opinion, right? And when we talk about these lights out warehouses, part the key thing is that which lens are you wearing at this point with the question, right?
Hello, everyone. My name is Parth Pitani. I'm the host for Robot Forward Warehousing podcast. And today I'm joined by a friend from across the Atlantic, Apoorv Jha. He has an amazing story, amazing insights to share with the industry. So we are really excited about this podcast as well as learning from all things that Apoorv can share. So Apoorv, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
So first of all, I think thank you so much, Parth, for having me here today. Right? And it's a pleasure talking to you and reaching out to a lot of people listening to us today. Yeah. Uh, to give you a brief, coming in from India, been in the industry for the past 10 years, been through the different industries in terms of warehouse automation and robotics, have been through the drill, and now I think if you talk about this entire journey has been quite enriching for me in terms of the different technologies and solutions which have really evolved in the Indian landscape first, and then now I'm a part of Novo Nordisk over here in Denmark, in Copenhagen.
Nice.
We shifted over here 10 months back, and now I think I'm in the completely new industry, pharmaceuticals, and really enjoying my time over here.
Nice.
It's
Awesome.
been such a good time in terms of learning the new technologies, the European model in terms of how we are executing projects, how we see these different landscapes turning out for us when we are doing obviously local projects in Denmark, and also across different regions, or let's say across different continents, I would say, right? So I think we are
Hmm.
executing projects in US, in the European region, then also in the LATAM area, right? So a lot of
Nice.
things happening
Yeah.
on the warehouse automation side from Novo Nordisk.
That's awesome. No, actually, that's one of the talking points that I had on my list to talk to you
Yeah,
about, like what you're working on, and specifically the journey that you made from the Asia to the European markets, right? And just learning things around the differences and the similarities, if you will, right? Difference in the similarity
right.
between two different continents when it comes to warehouse automation. So
Yeah.
why don't we start there, I think, right? So why don't you help us figure out, like, if I'm looking from an outside perspective, some similarities between, let's say, Asian markets and the European markets, as well as some differences between both the continents when it comes to
Right.
robotics automation and warehouse robotics automation.
Right. I think if you look at one of the key similarities, if we talk about, right, in both these different geographies, one thing which I have seen peculiar over here is that both these geographies are, quite huge, or let's say even the expanse is quite big, but you have local distribution happening across all these both these regions, right? That means you're looking at local distribution, and how could you reach your customers to the with the maximum speed is something which is of utmost importance in both these regions, if we see,
Mhm.
right? Now if I start talking, or let's say start looking towards the stark differences, if we see, I think the first which I would like to talk about is obviously the availability of workforce in both these regions, right? That
Mm.
if you look at the Indian ecosystem, you have the workforce availability, and in the EU, with the aging population to a greater extent, that's why there is an acute shortage which we see, right? I think one of the key things, if you look at, right, the European market, it basically talks more about strategic scaling. That means you're looking at projects in a longer horizon of, let's say, 5 years, 10 years of the scale, right? Whereas if you look at the Indian market, right, the retailers, or let's say if we talk about the industries, or let's say the logistics industry, they have so much of evolution happening because of the growth in demand, that how do you ensure that you invest in one of the areas, and then you
Mhm.
quickly outpace the entire
Growth,
ecosystem,
probably.
right?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So that's one of the key flavors which we see, right? I think that's one of the key areas. And when you look at the ecosystem, obviously this is one of the regions, the European regions, which is much more in the warehouse automation space for the past 30-40 years. So you have a lot of players, a lot of integrators and original equipment manufacturers who are placed out of the European region. So the ease of access to the robotics industry has been really great for different companies. If you look at the major logistics hub, when we are talking about Netherlands, when talking about Germany, right, all these regions, or let's say,
Hmm.
if we try to summarize, it's the mainland Europe for us, right?
Hmm.
But if you look at the Indian ecosystem, I think there have been significant improvements with the existing players ramping up, wherein you see the likes of Adverb, Falcon, all these companies now scaling up big time, also expanding in India and also reaching out to the larger ecosystem, across different markets. But then one of the key things, or let's say one of the practices which has now started happening, is that you have a lot of local partnerships coming up in India. That means
Hmm.
you could almost take the example of Armstrong Dematic, right? Wherein you
Hmm.
have Dematic, who is one of the global players, and then you have a local presence available, which obviously gives you the edge towards service and the serviceability part of catering to the industry, but also brings in the expertise of what Dematic, or let's say any of these big players, have to offer in terms of the standardization which they have been doing in the industry for so long. So these are the few stark differences if we talk about. But I think in the longer run, you would really see them running neck to neck on the expansion of robotics.
Oh wow, no, that thank you for that insights. Actually, I
Yeah.
just was taking notes and I have like 5 to 7 points already to talk about. So thank you for that. No, I
Sure.
think you bring up a very interesting point that I think folks from outside of Asia or outside of India cannot imagine, just because I think the growth rate, right? The growth rate is so high that you do not know from next 2 years, will you need a bigger warehouse, or will you be just shifting the whole warehouse to a brand new building?
Yes.
And what kind of automation to do? And like to that point, I think Logimed that happened in India was a data point that validates that there is growth in the warehousing space in India, to a level that I was actually talking to a friend of ours, Sandeep, as well. Like Sandeep, for about exploring opportunities within Indian market, right? Because there are a lot of things that are happening in Indian market when it comes to warehousing space, and I think um, just a tangential point is around the growth of even the warehouse builders, if you will. So in Americas has a bigger player called Prologis, who does basically building of warehousing space. I think India is seeing that evolution as well, and that goes into the REITs market, because India doesn't have right now a lot of REITs, the real estate investment trust. I think that also builds into that one. But again, that I digress. But I think no, that's a good point. I think the growth is important, and I think folks don't know, and that changes your strategy really quickly. I think one important point that you mentioned was around the support and the local support. I think that topic recently came up with another friend of industry friend as well. Is a lot of industries, a lot of vendors are entering United States, and
Yeah.
what they will struggle or what they will need to plan for, let's say this way, like they need to plan for, is going to be around local support. Can they have someone available in 24 hours? Can they make sure that they have enough support that can have a confidence on installing their uh, technology within the warehousing space? So I think seeing that example of Armstrong Dematic, it's a good example, I think, and uh, people should take some inspirations from them, or at least some strategy inspirations from them, on how
Yeah.
can for new companies can it work, right? No, I think that's that's great. Actually,
Absolutely. I
I
think if you
yeah.
if you look at 5 years, 6 years down the line, and with the type of expansion which keeps on happening in India, one of the key areas for us was that, how do we bring in the best in class automation solutions to India? And
Mm,
the biggest bottleneck for us was that how can we get a local serviceability model with the world class manufacturing
mm.
capabilities of these organizations, the bigger
Yeah.
organizations who can actually bring in the technology in India and then help us scale up to that level wherein
Mm.
automation becomes much more of a day-to-day business, in terms of warehousing and logistics.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, yeah.
definitely watch out to. The Indian
Yes,
logistics space is
yes,
definitely to watch out for. So I think that that also brings me to a point, right? So you had a very interesting journey, right? You did your typical selling side, if you will, right? You were a seller of warehouse robotics, and you were an end user as well. You worked at Flipkart, Myntra.
yes,
Folks who don't know, that's pretty much the Indian e-commerce giants, Flipkart and Myntra. Myntra is pretty much apparel, I understand, as far as apparel focused e-commerce brand.
yes,
Um,
absolutely.
uh, Pretty big in Indian market, Indian subcontinent. And then you worked there. You worked at Flipkart. Then you moved on to Gray Orange, and now you are in pharmaceuticals. So that is pretty diverse experiences, right? So I think for me, I think I understand the e-commerce space, and I think most of our listeners understand the e-commerce space. But I think the pharmaceutical place is very interesting space, right? So help us, like if you can, walk us through a typical warehouse design of, or how would you design a warehouse for a pharmaceutical product
Yeah, yeah.
at a
I
high
think,
level? Yeah.
yeah, yes. I think, but if you look at, the warehousing or the interlogistics in the pharmaceutical industry, right? That's a I would call it, or let's say I would like to split it up into two parts, right? First is obviously more of the retail, wherein you have these e-pharmacies, which are obviously catering to the bigger market in terms of off the shelf, or let's say off the counter drugs or medicines which are needed. Now that's one part which is, again, you could almost start correlating it to that e-commerce business model which has been there in the industry, right, along with other different products. When you look at the other bigger giant in this entire pharmaceutical industry is the pharmaceutical manufacturing environment, right? And that manufacturing environment is wherein you have all these different production lines, wherein you have packaging lines, which all need to work in so much of rhythm and so much of tandem with each other, that interlogistics is basically becoming more and more the backbone of how can you cater all the product supplies which needs to happen to your production units, to your packaging lines, and then finally work as the corridor towards your mega factories, right? So that's one of the key concept which is now coming up across different players in the industry. So that's
Interesting.
that's that's one way of looking at the market. Now, when specifically talking about the manufacturing logistics, right? I think the key focus for us, or let's say key focus for any manufacturing logistics industry players, have been that warehousing and interlogistics can never be the bottleneck, right? That means
Mm,
we have to ensure that we are running at 24/7 production. That means we have to be, or let's say from a manufacturing logistics perspective, we have to be so sharp in terms of, our services, in terms of how can we reach to those numbers of, you're talking about 99.9% of uptime commitments, right? So these are something which are the key areas which we need to look at, right?
oh wow.
Um, and then parallelly, you have so many different packaging machines coming in, and because of the industry segmentation, right, that you have dedicated knowledge bases when you talk about suppliers in
Mm,
terms of manufacturing logistics, or let's say the manufacturing production machines, right? So you have two different players in your same factory, two or three or four different players in your same factory, and then you have to focus on integrating them for it to work like a clockwork. So that's
mm.
that's the that's the place where magic needs to happen, and that is the effort wherein most of the time we need to be really focused on in terms of how can we deliver a great world class factory for our business.
Think about it, because
Yeah,
now the differentiation that you make, the retail versus manufacturing environment, and I think it makes sense in a way where I think for for folks who are very much into warehousing space, at least in North America, at least the people that I talk to, pretty much into like the finished good product, if you will, right? It's
Yeah,
a finished good, so it's a medicine, it's already made, and now you just have to distribute, or a finished good product. Whereas the manufacturing environment is more of a you have to manufacture something, so you need a bill of material, making sure your bill of material is available, all the components, not for the but ingredients for the machine, the
exactly.
medicines are available on time and in the right temperature control settings and stuff like that. So that's actually interesting. So when you think about pharmaceutical space, like how, I'm guessing lot control is by default, right? The lot control system has to be pretty much in and out everywhere. Is that a true statement?
Absolutely. I think if you
Okay.
look at the entire industry, I think it's running on the entire track and trace
Mhm.
methodology of how we track the entire product flow through the overall supply chain. When you look at how are we able to maintain the temperature ranges for all of these products whenever they are inside the factory, right?
Mhm.
So you have a lot of regulations and a lot of things at stake when you talk about the pharmaceutical supply chain, right? So you
Mhm.
have you're obviously serving your patients when you're talking about the pharmaceutical industry, right? And that's where the need for these kind of track and trace regulations, or I would call the method of doing business comes into picture. So
Mhm.
that's absolutely a must when you look at
Mhm.
the ecosystem for pharmaceuticals.
Mhm.
And because of that, when you talk about the automation industry or let's say the automation for warehousing or any of the sections in the pharmaceutical business, it's also a lot about digitalization, right? That you are way ahead in your digital journey, because that's the first stepping
Mhm.
milestone for you. That how could you digitalize your entire supply chain, and once you have moved towards that, I think that's the next natural progression which will happen towards
Mhm.
the warehouse automation, or looking at advanced robotics within the factories.
Interesting. I think that's the only parallel I was able to drive between pharmaceutical and my experience from the e-commerce
Yeah.
space. So that's good to know. And I think you mentioned something very interesting around manufacturing facility have to run 24/7 with 99.9% uptime commitments, right? So coming from a different side of the warehousing, it's a big commitment, right?
Yes.
So uh, let me ask you this way: I guess to keep something up, you need two-way approach, right? One is your internal teams, right? Making sure you have a maintenance team, I guess, or some kind of support team that is making sure that if the machine fails or automation fails, they are pretty much going there and fixing it. And then you
Yeah.
also have vendor support, which is pretty much your critical level one support. So that brings me to the point where, as you see the industry, the play that maintenance team does or the support team does for this 99% 9 uptime, uh, if you have to weigh between how balanced or how difficult it is going to be for folks who hasn't done this before, what things they need to be prepared for in a way, to, to think about that. Does it make sense what I'm asking? But what I'm trying to
Yeah.
understand is, like, if I'm on to that journey of 99.9% uptime, what I need to be prepared for.
Yeah, no, I think it absolutely makes sense, because obviously it's an attempt, or let's say it's basically your end state, right, where you want to reach. So there will be certain level of efforts, or at an organization level, which needs to happen, right? So I would see this as this at 2 3 levels, correct? I think the first is obviously for any of the industries, right? The core competency is obviously around uh, the automation solutions, or let's say these new technologies which are coming in from your partners, right? So I think the first approach is to actually work towards more of a strategic partnership while getting into the warehousing, or let's say the robotic space, right? So that's a key that you have your partner who also lives and breathes these numbers which we are talking about, correct? So that's the first thing which obviously needs to be looked at. And then obviously for any company or any organization who has such a strategic scaling in their mind in terms of going towards a digitalization journey or moving towards warehouse automation, the key thing is that as an organization you also start developing your teams, your internal capabilities around all of these kind of solutions. And when I say the capabilities, I think the key focus is to understand and realize what makes sense for you, what doesn't make sense in terms of your business scenarios. How could you work towards integrating all of these technologies into your ecosystem? And when I talk about ecosystem, it's about your facilities, your infrastructures, your working model. It's so important that your operations is a part of what you're getting into, because they are the ones who will live with these, right, with these robots. So
Yep.
that's one of the key focus. And obviously then there is a whole plethora of digitalization solutions which you will have to run your business, and then they need
Mhm.
to integrate with these systems. So it's a journey which needs to happen. And
Yep.
then once you're through your strategic partners, you have developed your in-house capabilities. I think that's where it's more of a team effort which will actually take it
Mhm.
towards the milestones.
Oh, that's actually a very good way to put that. I think journey is
Yeah.
it's a process, right? So that's actually good.
Yes.
So from that, I had 2 points that I want to talk about. So first of all, let's talk about the easier one. Okay, how do you keep, as an end user, right? How do you keep yourself updated on latest and the greatest that is happening in the space? I mean, I understand as an operator, you are always fixing something or fixing fighting some fires. Um, in that world, you have all these events coming up, all different podcasts including mine are trying to help with the education perspective, but at the end still the onus is on the end user to actually listen to something like this. So from your understanding, or from your just being on the end user side for more than me actually, so I'm trying to understand how do you feel, what are the best ways that have you found to be helpful to be updated on the latest and the greatest.
Right. I think first is obviously to follow your page.
Thanks.
Because every time I'm there on the LinkedIn, I find a lot of value which comes out of reading your content, reading your blogs. But then, jokes apart, I think the main focus, if I look at how I am trying to do it, or let's say how my team working parallelly with me, what we are trying to do is obviously to focus on two three things. I think one is getting into the nerves of business and understanding that what's needed in the next 5-10 years for them, right? That's the first thing. That means your business inside out first. And I think after that it's more of the journey wherein you connect with a lot of people. You are able to go and attend most of these different events happening. We have Logimat coming up, we have Modex coming up, right? So all of these events, they play a great role wherein you are able to see all of these technologies. And it's actually one of the key things which I also love to do is that I speak to a lot of people from sales and solutions in these different automation companies, right? Just as
Mhm.
a just as an introduction, I just take some time out of their calendars and try to understand their product. So it's a great way to keep on learning a lot about new technologies coming in and how you could look at them in terms of utilization for your own businesses, right? So that's why at least we are attempting to keep ourselves updated.
No, I think it's a great
Yeah,
point that you said. I think the first one actually hit home with me. Like knowing your business in and out is gonna help you figure out what you are trying to look for. Because today's world, I mean, we all know Chat GTP sponsored articles are everywhere, and just you can get so much paralysis by just reading all those articles and all those information, that if you don't pay attention, it's very easy to lose what you're trying to solve for.
yeah,
So first point is definitely very important. I feel like everyone should do it. There's like, understand your business problems first, right, before you try to find a solution. Instead of finding a problem, find a problem sorry, find a solution for, afterwards. First find a problem. So that's
yeah.
actually a solid point. And now I want to move to a debated mention that you say. Okay, this is something
Absolutely.
I am I'm a little bit debate. I have some strong opinions on it, so I want to learn about your opinion. So, um, folks talk about lights out warehouse, right?
Okay.
Lights out warehouse is a topic where everyone seems to think that it's gonna happen in the future. To me, lights out is not. Let's say this way: lights out is not a possibility because you will need it's simple as that security and maintenance team to run your warehouse, because you need security to come and make sure it's it's secure warehouse, and your maintenance team something breaks. So robots are gonna take over. I'm not denying that, but I'm denying that it's not gonna be lights out. It's gonna be robot forward warehousing. Sorry, podcast, but it's gonna be robot forward. So what are your thoughts on it? And please fight with me because I wanna learn
And
about what
and I
other
think I
folks would say.
absolutely, and I think you will be disappointed, but I am absolutely in echo with what you say in terms of
Oh,
robot forward
okay.
warehouses, and I
Okay.
share the same opinion, right? And when we talk about these lights out warehouses part, the key thing is that which lens are you wearing at this point with the question, right? If
Mm,
you're wearing the finance lens, then obviously the question is that, okay, do I need to incur any operational expense towards this, right? And
mm,
that's one of the key areas. Are you looking at it from a lens of the solution provider, or are you looking at it from a lens of a business who says that, okay, I have invested in my warehousing technologies, I have invested in that. Now with minimal disruption, I'm able to run my entire fulfillment, supply chain, production, or any of the businesses in which you are, right? So it completely depends on the way you are looking at it. But I think I completely echo that. Obviously you will need people who are experts in terms of maintaining these and running these solutions day in day out, right?
yep,
Because just like anybody, robots will make mistakes, right?
yep.
They're also designed by us, so that means they will
Yeah,
make one or the other mistake. So
yep.
obviously, we need people who are proactively there, and just like any machine, any engine, we need to have preventive maintenance cycles. We have to have the course correction in terms of how can we look at that. Then obviously looking at it, you also need to start looking at the part wherein how could you start building in the modelings with your automation systems, right? That you have somebody who is also there in the corporate offices looking at the warehousing solution, that okay, today I'm selling this white t-shirt a lot. So does it make sense to me for me to actually bring them up in my storage?
Mm, yep.
So these are the kind of things which will happen. So it's an ecosystem. I think you can't think of it in a very secluded way. It
Mm.
has to be immersed, integrated into how you run your business.
That's thank you. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
disappointed because, but it makes me a little. It provides a validation that I think I've been thinking about. It's like it's gonna be robot forward, not the lights out. For of
Yeah.
course, lights out definition is yet to be defined by like folks, right? There is no one definition for lights out. So whenever I see lights out, when I was like, no, it's not lights out, it's robot forward. Lights out is meaning that,
Yeah.
at least from my side, it's like nobody is there. But anyways, I think this has been great conversation, Apoorv. I think I learned so much. Like I had no idea about how pharmaceuticals work and how diverse the ecosystem is in India versus European. And I think you gave a very good perspective on the end user perspective. I'm just going through my notes. I think I definitely appreciate it. I think our listeners will also appreciate that. Uh, I think I do want to ask you a couple of light-hearted questions as well,
Yeah.
in terms of questions, as in because I want to learn more about you, right? I want folks to understand your journey, your how you came to where you are right now, and so I think one of the important question I always try to go back in my memory, what was a uh, pivotal moment for me as in career. I want to ask about you. Like, what was that decision or a moment in your career that, you decided that, warehouse automation, warehouse robotics is going to be my thing?
Okay. I think this is a great one, and I think this dates back to my early days when I started working in the warehousing ecospace along with Mintra, right?
Hmm.
And at that time, I was primarily into operations excellence, challenges which are more day to day in terms of business. And then I used to look at certain challenges, or let's say certain operational challenges which used to come up for our teams. And it was something that wherein we were still not able to solve it with our manual processes, our manual approach. And that led to us thinking that, okay, what's the next step for us, right? So that next step is wherein warehouse automation and robotics started coming into picture. My interest really started developing towards that. And I think the major spark, or let's say the major trigger to this was given when I joined Flipkart, and I was able to work on a lot of new mandates, new projects, and new strategic scaling, which Flipkart was doing at that point of time, which really helped me evolve as an individual, and plus also understand the business ecosystem a lot more well when you are a warehouse automation person, being a part of such a large organization who is handling so many legs of your e-commerce business, right? So
Yep.
that's when it really got pinned down for me that, okay, this
Nice.
is what I need to do for the next 20-30 years, and then we will see
Nice.
to it that where
That's
does it take me
awesome.
ahead.
That's then retirement, right, Apu?
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome.
That's what
So
we're talking
if
about.
so, just remind. So Walmart is invested into Flipkart, right?
Yes. So
Okay.
Walmart,
Okay.
took the controlling stakes in 2018, if I'm not wrong.
Okay. Okay.
And I think that was the first project for me. So
Nice.
Walmart was, or let's say Walmart is still, you know, drilling down, or let's say, pinning down on the fact that e-groceries are a big market in India, right? And I think that
Mm.
was that was the first area where we invested into a carton shuttle solution, and
Mm.
expanded big time
Nice.
in terms of how could we increase our number of orders per day, how could we increase our scale, how could we increase, or let's say reduce down on our cost structure for every order. So those are the kind of things which happened.
Nice.
And
That's interesting.
it was really quite a lot of fun.
Uh, You actually bring up a very good point. Anecdotally, is like yesterday itself, I was reading one article where they were comparing grocers in North America, and Walmart was number one in that.
Yeah.
So I can see Walmart has a unique strength in grocery. So now
Yes.
when you mention Flipkart being e-grocer, makes a really good play for them. So that's
Yeah.
interesting to make those parallels between two different continents.
Yeah, and I think
I
this
think
year also they're double down. They are double down in terms of expanding for the grocery market, and in terms of different pin code coverages, they are expanding really big time this year.
Oh wow, interesting.
Yeah.
That's a topic for next time, probably. But no, Apoorv, it has been a great conversation with you. I think, as I said, we learned a lot. I think our folks will learn a lot as well. Um, Thank you for your time. I really
Yes.
appreciate it, and it has been a pleasure talking to you, Apoorv.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Parth, and it has been a real pleasure. And thank you so much for everybody, or let's say all of your audience, to hear us out today. And we are just doing our bit in terms of sharing about the industry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and as a good friend of mine, Kevin from the New Warehouse says, how should folks reach out to you?
Yeah, I think the easiest way to reach out to me is through LinkedIn. You could drop me a mail, and I'll be
Awesome,
happy to connect. I'll be happy to collaborate even further, and
awesome.
make an inch move towards creating an
Yeah,
awareness about the entire warehouse automation industry.
I appreciate it, Apoorv. Thank you so much.
Yes, absolutely, my pleasure. Thank you so much, Parth. See you soon.
You have been listening to Robot Forward Warehousing Podcast with Parth Pithan. Stay connected with us by subscribing to the show on your favorite podcast player. If you like what you heard, please rate us and help us reach more warehouse robotics practitioners. Thank you for listening. Until next time.